Her manager didn't just humiliate her, he buzzed the clippers to her skull while donors laughed. Phones out, cameras rolling, and then the ballroom doors exploded open. Her Mafia boss husband walked in, saw the hair on the floor, and everything in that room changed in one breath. But the real question? What he did next didn't end the night it started a war. If this story pulled you in, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss what's coming next. I've got another unforgettable story dropping tomorrow. And while you're here, jump into the comments and tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing our community from all around the world. Alright, let's get back into it. Amy Stone's feet were screaming by hour 6. The Aurelio Grand Ballroom glittered like old money incarnate crystal chandeliers dripping light onto silk-draped tables. Women in gowns worth more than Ami's annual salary gliding across marble floors. She felt the familiar ache of not belonging, the way service workers always do in rooms built to remind them of their place. But when her supervisor called that afternoon, desperate for someone to cover the charity gala's double shift, Amy had said yes. She always said yes. The overtime would cover next month's car payment. More champagne, now. The voice came from the center table, sharp and entitled. Ami grabbed a fresh bottle from the service station, her sensible black flats squeaking slightly against the polished floor. She recognized the group immediately, wealthy donors, the kind who treated waitstaff like furniture. And there, holding court in a deep burgundy suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent, was Caleb Rowan, her manager. 32, charismatic in that dangerous way that made people overlook cruelty, and already 3 drinks past charming. His table was loud. 8 guests in designer everything, their laughter too sharp, their phones out, capturing content for feeds Amy would never scroll through. Finally, Caleb said as she approached. He didn't look at her face, just thrust his empty glass toward her like she was part of the furniture. Amy's hands trembled as she poured. 6 hours on her feet, the bottle heavier than it looked, the chandelier light blazing directly in her eyes. The champagne splashed the rim of Caleb's glass, and a few amber drops hit his polished Italian leather shoes. The table went silent. "Are you serious right now?" Caleb's voice cut through the chamber music. "I'm so sorry." Amy reached for a napkin, her pulse spiking. Do you have any idea what these cost?" Caleb stood abruptly, holding his foot out like she'd committed murder. He turned to his table, voice rising, playing to his audience. "More than she makes in a month, I'd bet." Laughter rippled through nearby tables. Not loud, the polite kind that stings worse, like people were embarrassed for her but not enough to intervene. "Sir, please, it was an accident." "Oh, it was an accident." One of the guests, a woman in a silver sequined gown, pulled out her phone, smirking. "Are you getting this?" "Already recording," another guest confirmed, camera trained on Ami's face. Amy's throat tightened. She could feel hundreds of eyes turning toward her now. Other servers frozen in place, the string quartet trailing off mid-note. Caleb stepped closer, and Amy caught the smell of expensive whiskey on his breath. "You know what? I think the staff here needs a lesson in consequences." He turned, scanning the table, and his eyes landed on something near the centerpiece. Electric clippers left there from an earlier comedy segment about a celebrity shave-off fundraiser. Caleb picked them up, weighing them in his hand. His smile widened. "Let's make this fun," he announced to the table. "What do you say? Should we teach her what happens when you ruin expensive things?" The table erupted in drunken cheers. "Caleb, no," Ami's voice cracked, but 2 of the guests were already pulling a chair into the center of the floor. Caleb grabbed Amy's arm, not hard enough to bruise, but firm enough that she couldn't pull away without making a scene worse than it already was. "Sit," he ordered, his voice still light, still playful, like this was all a joke. Ami sat, her vision blurred, her hands shook in her lap. The clippers buzzed to life. "Smile for the camera, sweetheart," Caleb said and pressed the blade to her scalp. The first chunk of dark hair hit the marble floor. Ami's breath shattered. The sound of the clippers filled her ears, drowning out the laughter, the camera clicks, the voice in her head screaming for this to stop. She felt the cold metal scrape across her scalp, felt tears streaming down her face, tasted salt and humiliation. The guests laughed. Phones tilted higher. Someone started a live stream. Caleb carved another stripe through her hair, narrating like a game show host. "And here we have the newest style early bankruptcy chic." More laughter, more flashes. Ami closed her eyes, wishing she could disappear. And then, the ballroom doors slammed open. Every head turned. A man stood in the doorway, tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in a black wool coat over a tailored gray suit. Dark hair slicked back, face carved from stone. eyes cold enough to frost glass, neck tattoos barely visible above his collar. Adone Ferry. The room didn't just go quiet. It went dead. Amy's eyes flew open. Her husband stood 30 feet away, his gaze locked on the clippers in Caleb's hand, then on the tears streaming down her face, then on the hair scattered across the marble like evidence of a crime. Adone didn't run, didn't shout. He walked, fast, purposeful, lethal. The crowd parted like water. Caleb finally noticed, turning mid-laugh, the clippers still buzzing in his hand. His smile faltered when he saw who was coming. Adone stopped 3 feet away. His voice when it came was quiet, controlled, terrifying. "Step away from my wife." The clippers slipped from Caleb's hand and clattered to the floor. The clippers hit the marble floor with a crack that echoed through the ballroom like a gunshot. Caleb's face drained of color. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. No sound came out. Adone didn't acknowledge him. Not yet. He moved past Caleb like he was air, like he was nothing, and knelt in front of Ami. His hands steady, gentle, cupped her face, thumbs brushing away the tears still streaming down her cheeks. "Amore mio," he whispered. His voice was so soft it barely reached her. "Look at me." Ami's breath hitched. She couldn't speak, couldn't move. Her hands were still trembling in her lap, her scalp burning where the clippers had torn through. Adone's jaw tightened as he took in the damage, the uneven patches of hair, the raw humiliation in her eyes, the way she was folding into herself like she wanted to vanish. He slipped off his black wool coat and draped it around her shoulders, shielding her from the phones still pointed in their direction. "You're safe now," he said quietly. "I promise." Then he stood, and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Adone turned to face Caleb, who had backed up 3 steps, his burgundy suit suddenly looking like a costume on a child playing dress-up. I didn't know," Caleb stammered, his voice cracking. "I didn't know she was... You didn't know she was a human being?" Adone's voice was still quiet, still controlled, but there was something underneath it now, something sharp and cold and patient. "Or you didn't know she was my wife?" The ballroom was so silent that Amy could hear her own heartbeat. One of the guests, the woman in the silver sequined gown, tried to slip her phone into her purse. Adone's eyes flicked to her. She froze. "Don't," he said softly. "Everyone keeps their phones out. You wanted to record, so record." No one moved. Adone stepped closer to Caleb, hands clasped loosely in front of him. He looked almost casual, almost bored. But Ami knew that posture. She'd seen it once before, years ago, when a business partner had tried to cheat him. That partner's company had folded within a month. "You're Caleb Rowan," Adone said. Not a question, a statement. Manager of the Aurelio Grand Ballroom, 28 years old, graduated from Boston University. You drive a leased BMW. You rent an apartment in Brooklyn. Your credit score is 640. Caleb's eyes widened. "You owe $47,000 in student loans," Adone continued, his tone never changing. "And you have a habit of humiliating your staff when you've had too much to drink. This isn't the first time, is it?" Silence. "Answer me." "I know, sir. I mean, it was just..." Caleb's voice was shaking now. "It was a joke. We were just having fun. She spilled wine on my shoes and I thought..." "You thought you'd shave my wife's head in front of 300 people." Adone tilted his head slightly, studying Caleb like he was something stuck to the bottom of his shoe. "For fun. I didn't know. You didn't know because you didn't ask. You didn't ask her name. You didn't ask if she was okay. You saw someone you had power over, and you decided to break her for entertainment." Adone's voice dropped even lower. "That was a mistake." One of Caleb's friends, the man who'd been recording earlier, stepped forward, his phone still in his hand. "Look, man, we didn't mean anything by it. It was just..." Adone's gaze shifted to him. The man stopped mid-sentence. "Delete it," Adone said. "What?" "The video. Delete it. Now." The man hesitated, glancing at Caleb. "I'm not asking twice," Adone said. Still quiet, still calm, but the air around him felt like it was vibrating with menace. The man's fingers fumbled over his phone screen. It's deleted. Good. Now leave." "We paid for this table," I said. "Leave." The man grabbed his jacket and walked toward the exit, fast. The woman in the silver gown followed, then another guest, then another. Within 30 seconds, Caleb's entire table had scattered like roaches when the lights come on. Caleb stood alone in the center of the ballroom, his burgundy suit wrinkled now, his face slick with sweat. Adone turned back to him. "You're fired," he said simply. Caleb blinked. You can't fire me. You're not. I own 48% of this venue. Adon let that sink in. Silent partnership, signed 3 years ago. Which means I'm on the board. Which means I have the authority to terminate anyone who creates a hostile work environment. Which means, Caleb, you're done. Caleb's legs visibly wobbled. Please, I need this job. I'll apologize. You'll leave, Adon said. And if I ever see you near my wife again, if I ever hear that you've so much as looked at another employee the wrong way, I will make sure you never work in this city again. Do you understand me? Caleb nodded frantically. Say it. I understand. Good. Adoni gestured toward the exit. Security will escort you out. You have 10 minutes to clear your office. After that, anything left behind will be thrown away. 2 security guards appeared from the side entrance, large men in black suits who moved with military precision. They flanked Caleb, waiting. Caleb opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, then thought better of it. He turned and walked toward the exit, his shoulders hunched, his hands shaking. The ballroom doors closed behind him with a heavy final thud. Adone turned back to Ami. She was still sitting in the chair, his coat wrapped around her, her eyes wide and red-rimmed. She looked up at him, and for the first time since he'd entered, she saw something flicker across his face. Not anger. Fear. Fear that he'd been too late. Fear that she'd been hurt in a way he couldn't fix. He knelt in front of her again, his hands finding hers. Let's go home, he said softly. Ami nodded. She didn't trust herself to speak. Amy didn't sleep that night. She sat on the edge of their bed, staring at her reflection in the vanity mirror. The uneven patches of hair, the red eyes, the ghost of the woman she'd been 6 hours ago. Adone had tried to hold her when they got home. She'd let him for a while, before pulling away and locking herself in the bathroom. She'd sat on the cold tile floor for an hour, crying until there was nothing left. When she finally came out, Adone was standing by the window, his phone pressed to his ear, his voice low and clipped. He'd glanced at her, ended the call immediately, and crossed the room in 3 strides. I'm calling a lawyer, he'd said, and a private investigator, and I'm going back to that ballroom tomorrow. Amy had just nodded. She was too tired to argue, too broken to care. By 7 a.m., Adone was gone. Amy found a note on the kitchen counter, written in his precise handwriting. Stay home today. I'll handle everything. I love you. She crumpled it in her fist and threw it in the trash. Then she pulled it back out, smoothed it flat, and tucked it into her pocket. Adone arrived at the Aurelio Grand Ballroom at 8:15 a.m., flanked by 3 men in tailored suits. One was his lawyer Vincent Calabrese, 56, silver-haired, ruthless. The second was his head of security, Luca Romano, ex-military, built like a tank. The third was a private investigator named Dominic Hayes, who specialized in corporate misconduct and had a reputation for finding skeletons in closets people didn't even know existed. The ballroom's main office was on the 2nd floor, accessible only by keycard. Adone didn't have one. He didn't need one. Luca bypassed the security panel in 45 seconds. The office door swung open. Inside, the ballroom's general manager, Gerald Hastings, 62, overweight, balding, was sitting behind a mahogany desk, sipping coffee and scrolling through his tablet. He looked up, startled, as Adone and his team walked in. What the hell? Gerald started to rise. You can't just... Sit, Adone said. Gerald sat. Adone placed a leather portfolio on the desk and opened it, revealing a stack of documents. He slid the first page across the desk. Silent partnership agreement, Adone said. Signed April 2022. I own 48% of this venue. You know this, Gerald. We've sat in board meetings together. Gerald's face flushed. What's this about? If it's about last night. It's about last night, Adone said flatly. And it's about the 3 years before last night. Dominic? The investigator stepped forward, placing a tablet on the desk. He tapped the screen, and a video began playing. Caleb Rowan, in his burgundy suit, berating a young busboy in the kitchen, threatening to dock his pay over a dropped tray. Another video, Caleb mocking a hostess for her accent. Another, Caleb shoving a server against a wall during a private event. Gerald's face went pale. 16 incidents, Dominic said, his voice clinical. Spanning 3 years, all documented, some by security footage, some by employees who were too afraid to report. All time-stamped, all verified. I didn't, Gerald stammered. I didn't know about most of those. You didn't know because you didn't ask, Adone said, echoing his words from the night before. You enabled him. You protected him. You gave him authority over vulnerable people and looked the other way when he abused it. Vincent, the lawyer, stepped forward. Under New York labor law, this constitutes a hostile work environment. You're liable. The venue is liable. And given Mr. Rowan's conduct was recorded and live-streamed last night, you're also facing a public relations nightmare. Gerald's hands shook as he reached for his coffee mug. What do you want? I want Caleb Rowan's employment terminated immediately, Adone said. I want a full review of every employee complaint filed in the last 5 years. I want new HR policies in place by the end of the week, and I want you to issue a public apology on behalf of this venue to my wife. Done, Gerald said quickly. Too quickly. Adone leaned forward, his hands flat on the desk. I'm not finished. Gerald swallowed hard. I'm also requesting an emergency board meeting. Today. I'm calling for a vote of no confidence in your leadership, and I'm recommending that this venue be restructured under new management. You can't. I can. Adone straightened. Check the bylaws. Any partner with more than 40% ownership can call an emergency meeting. I have 48. The meeting is scheduled for 3 p.m. You'll be notified officially within the hour. Gerald's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. Adone turned to leave, then paused at the door. One more thing, he said, his voice quiet. Dangerous. The full footage from last night unedited, with audio has been saved to a secure server. If anyone tries to bury this, if anyone tries to spin it, if anyone tries to paint my wife as anything other than the victim she is, I will release every second of it to every major news outlet in this city. Are we clear? Gerald nodded frantically. Good, Adone gestured to his team. Vincent will send over the formal documentation. Luca will be stationed here to ensure no evidence is tampered with. Dominic will continue his investigation. Investigation into what? Gerald's voice cracked. Adone smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Everything. By noon, the emergency board meeting had been confirmed. By 1 p.m., 3 board members had already called Adone privately, asking what he wanted. By 2 p.m., Caleb Rowan's employment had been officially terminated, and his office had been cleared out by security. By 2:45 p.m., Adone was sitting in the boardroom on the 2nd floor, reviewing his notes. And by 3 p.m., when the board members filed in 7 men and women in expensive suits, their expressions ranging from curious to terrified, Adone Ferry was ready. He didn't just want justice. He wanted control, and he was about to take it. Caleb Rowan posted the video at 11:47 p.m. That night, Amy was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, when her phone started buzzing. Once, twice, then continuously, like a swarm of angry hornets. She picked it up. 17 text messages, 32 notifications. Her social media accounts were exploding. Her hands shook as she opened Instagram. The video was everywhere. But it wasn't the full video. It was edited, clipped, carefully curated to tell a different story. In Caleb's version, Ami was laughing, smiling. The audio had been stripped out, replaced with upbeat music. The caption read, Charity Gala Fun. This awesome waitress volunteered for our fundraiser shave-off challenge. What a sport. Number charity event. Number good vibes. Number Aurelio Grand. Amy's stomach turned. The comments were already rolling in. Wow. She's so brave. Love this energy. Wait, is this the same video? I heard she was assaulted? No way. Look at her, she's totally fine with it. Amy's breath came in short, shallow gasps. She scrolled further. Another post. This one from one of Caleb's friends at the table, the man in the tailored suit who'd been recording. The caption, Drama queens trying to ruin a good man's career over a joke. She signed up for this. Stop the cancel culture. Her phone slipped from her hands and landed on the bed. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The door opened. Adone stood in the doorway, his phone already in his hand, his face carved from stone. I saw it, he said quietly. Ami looked up at him, her eyes brimming with tears. They're saying I wanted it. They're saying I'm lying. Adone crossed the room in 3 strides and sat beside her, pulling her into his chest. They won't be saying it for long. How? Her voice cracked. How do you fight this? It's everywhere. People believe him. Adone's jaw tightened. Because I'm going to show them the truth. By 6 a.m., Adone was back in his office. Vincent and Dominic were already there. Laptops open, phones ringing, the air thick with tension. We have the full footage, Vincent said, pulling up the raw files on his screen. Every angle, security cameras, guest phones, Caleb's own phone. We have audio. We have timestamps. We have everything. How long to compile it? Adone asked. 2 hours, maybe 3. Do it in 1. Dominic leaned forward. Adone, we need to be strategic about this. If we release it too fast, it looks reactive. We need a statement, a narrative. We need the truth. Adone interrupted, his voice sharp. And we need it now. Every second that video stays up, it destroys her. So we don't wait. We don't strategize. We bury him. Vincent nodded. I'll draft the statement. Make it short, Adone said. And make it clear. Caleb Rowan assaulted an employee. The ballroom enabled it. And anyone who defends him is complicit. At 9:23 a.m., the full video dropped. Not on social media. On every major news outlet in New York. Adone had contacts. He'd made calls. He'd paid for priority placement. And within minutes, the unedited footage was playing on screens across the city. 3 hours of raw, unfiltered evidence. Caleb grabbing Amy's arm. Caleb shoving her into the chair. The clippers buzzing to life. Amy's tears. Her pleading. The guests laughing. Recording. Cheering. And then Adone walking in. The statement accompanied the footage, released simultaneously by Vincent's firm and the Aurelio Grand's legal team. Last night, Ami Ferry, an employee of the Aurelio Grand Ballroom, was publicly assaulted by manager Caleb Rowan during a charity event. Contrary to false narratives circulating online, Miss Ferry did not consent to this act. She was humiliated, degraded, and traumatized in front of hundreds of guests who did nothing to intervene. Mr. Rowan has been terminated. The Aurelio Grand Ballroom is conducting a full internal review. We stand with Miss Ferry and all victims of workplace abuse. The internet exploded. Within an hour, Caleb's edited video had been flagged and removed from Instagram. Within 2 hours, number Justice for Amy was trending nationally. Within 3 hours, journalists were camped outside Caleb Rowan's apartment building. Caleb tried to fight back. At 11:04 a.m., he posted a tearful video on TikTok, claiming he was being destroyed by cancel culture and that the whole thing had been taken out of context. Dominic had the video taken down within 20 minutes. At 1:37 p.m., Caleb's lawyer released a statement claiming Amy had willingly participated and was seeking attention. Vincent responded with a lawsuit filing defamation, emotional distress, and assault. The filing was public, detailed, damning. By 3 p.m., Caleb's lawyer had withdrawn the statement and resigned from the case. By 5 p.m., 3 former Aurelio Grand employees had come forward with their own stories of abuse at Caleb's hands. By 7 p.m., major donors who'd attended the gala were issuing public apologies and distancing themselves from the event. By 9 p.m., the Aurelio Grand Ballroom had lost 6 corporate sponsorships. And by midnight, Caleb Rowan was no longer just fired. He was radioactive. Ami watched it all unfold from the couch, her laptop open, her phone buzzing with messages of support from people she'd never met. Adone sat beside her, his hand resting on her knee, his expression unreadable. "Is it over?" she asked quietly. Adone looked at her, his dark eyes steady. "No. What do you mean?" "Caleb's finished. But the people who enabled him, the board, the owners, the system that let this happen, they're still there." His voice was calm, cold. "And I'm going to dismantle every single piece of it." Amy's chest tightened. She saw something in his eyes then, something that scared her. Not anger. Hunger. "Adone, they humiliated you in front of the world," he said softly. "So I'm going to take everything they have, their reputations, their power, their control. That's not..." She hesitated. "That's not justice. That's revenge." Adone's jaw tightened. "Sometimes they're the same thing." Ami pulled her hand away. For the first time since the night began, she wondered if her husband had crossed a line he couldn't come back from. And worse, she wondered if he even wanted to. The emergency board meeting reconvened at 9 a.m. the next morning. Amy didn't go. She stayed home, sitting in the kitchen with cold coffee and a phone that wouldn't stop ringing. Journalists, lawyers, strangers offering support or asking for interviews. She turned it off and stared at the wall. Adone had left before dawn without waking her. She'd found another note on the counter. "Trust me, A." She wasn't sure she did anymore. The boardroom on the second floor of the Aurelio Grand was designed to intimidate floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a table made from reclaimed Italian marble, leather chairs that cost more than most people's cars. Adone sat at the head of the table, Vincent on his right, Dominic on his left. Across from him sat the 7 board members, their expressions ranging from defensive to outright hostile. Gerald Hastings looked like he hadn't slept. His tie was crooked, his eyes bloodshot. "Let's get this over with," said Patricia Klein, the board's vice chair, 64, sharp-featured, old money. "We've already fired Rowan. We've issued a statement. What more do you want, Ferry?" Adone opened the leather folder in front of him. "I want to discuss the venue's ownership structure." The room went still. "What are you talking about?" Gerald's voice cracked. Adone slid a document across the table. "Over the past 72 hours, I've acquired an additional 18% stake in the Aurelio Grand Ballroom through the purchase of shares from 3 minority investors." Patricia leaned forward, scanning the document. Her face paled. "You can't, this isn't—" "It's legal," Vincent interjected smoothly. "All transactions were conducted through proper channels. Verified, notarized, recorded with the state. That gives you 66%, said Howard Chen, the CFO, his voice tight. "You have controlling interest." Adone nodded. "Which means I can restructure this venue however I see fit. Starting with new management." Gerald shot to his feet. "You're removing me?" "I'm removing everyone," Adone said calmly. "Effective immediately. The entire executive team is suspended pending a full audit. New leadership will be appointed by week's end." "You can't do this." Patricia slammed her hand on the table. "We built this venue. We've been here for 20 years. And in those 20 years, you created a culture that protected abusers and silenced victims." Adone's voice was ice. "You ignored complaints. You buried incidents. You prioritized reputation over humanity. That ends now." Howard stood, his face red. "This is a coup. We'll fight you in court." "Go ahead," Adone said. "But while you're drafting your lawsuits, you might want to review these." Dominic placed a second stack of documents on the table. Howard picked one up. His hand started shaking. "What is this?" Patricia whispered. "Financial records," Dominic said. 3 years' worth. Unreported cash transactions, off-book payments, money moving through shell accounts. Some of it tied to private gambling operations run out of the venue's VIP lounges. The room erupted. "That's confidential." "That's illegal." "Where did you get those?" "It doesn't matter where I got them," Adone said, his voice cutting through the chaos. "What matters is that the IRS will find them very interesting, as will the State Gaming Commission, and the district attorney." Gerald collapsed back into his chair. "You're destroying us." "No," Adone said quietly. "You destroyed yourselves. I'm just making sure everyone sees it." By noon, the board had been dissolved. By 2 p.m., federal investigators were en route to the ballroom. By 4 p.m., news broke that the Aurelio Grand's ownership had officially transferred to Adone Ferry, who now controlled the venue outright. The headlines were everywhere. "Mafia boss takes over Aurelio Grand after wife's assault." "Power play. Ferry family acquires historic ballroom. From victim to victor. Inside the Aurelio takeover." Adone didn't read them. He was too busy signing new contracts, appointing interim management, and drafting policies that would make the Aurelio Grand the most employee-protected venue in the state. But when he finally came home at 8 p.m., exhausted and running on coffee and adrenaline, he found Amy sitting on the couch, arms wrapped around her knees, staring at the TV. The news was playing. Footage of federal agents entering the ballroom, interviews with former employees, speculation about Adone's empire and connections. She didn't look at him when he walked in. "Amy, you bought the whole place," she said quietly. "I did. You ruined their lives. They ruined yours." She finally looked at him, and there was something in her eyes he'd never seen before. Fear. Not of him hurting her. Fear of what he was capable of. "Adone, you didn't just fire them. You destroyed them. Gerald's wife called me today crying. She said they're losing their house. That they're kids." "Gerald enabled an abuser," Adone said flatly. "He ignored complaints for years. He protected Caleb because Caleb brought in wealthy clients. He chose money over people. Over you." "I know that," Ami said, her voice breaking. "But where does it stop? You've taken the ballroom. You've exposed them. You've handed them to federal investigators. When is it enough?" Adone set his briefcase down slowly. "When you're safe." "I am safe. Caleb's gone. He can't hurt me anymore." but the system that protected him is still out there, Adonai said, his voice rising. In every restaurant, every hotel, every venue where workers are invisible and management looks the other way. So no, Ami, it's not enough. Not until I make an example so loud that no one ever thinks they can do this again. That's not justice, Ami whispered. That's revenge. Maybe. Adonai's jaw tightened. But it felt good. Watching them panic, watching them beg, watching them realize they couldn't hide anymore. He paused. It felt really good. Amy's breath caught. She saw it then, the part of him he usually kept buried. The part that didn't just protect. The part that punished. The part that could dismantle empires without blinking. I need space, she said quietly. Adonai froze. What? I need to think. About us. About this. She stood, her voice trembling. Because right now I don't recognize you. Ami, please, she whispered. Just give me time. She walked to the bedroom and closed the door. Adonai stood alone in the living room, the sound of federal raids still playing on the TV, and for the first time in his life, he felt powerless. He could buy buildings, control boards, destroy enemies, but he couldn't fix the look in his wife's eyes. 3 days passed in silence. Ami stayed in the guest room. Adonai worked from his office downtown, coming home late, leaving early. They moved through the apartment like ghosts, haunting different timelines. On the 4th morning, Ami woke to the sound of voices outside. She pulled back the curtain and saw news vans lining the street, reporters with cameras pointed at their building. Her phone buzzed. A text from her sister. Have you seen the news? They're saying Adonai's connected to. Amy didn't finish reading. She already knew what they were saying. The same things they always said about men like her husband. Adonai came home at noon, which was unusual. He found Ami in the kitchen, staring at her laptop screen. The headline read, Federal Raid Uncovers Illegal Gambling Ring at Aurelio Grand Owner Adon Ferry Under Scrutiny. They're trying to connect you to it, Amy said without looking up. I know. Are you? Adonai set his keys on the counter. No, but you knew about it. He didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was careful. I suspected. I had Dominic investigate. When he confirmed it, I made sure the right people saw the evidence. You tipped off federal investigators? Yes. So you used illegal activity to take down people you wanted gone. Ami closed the laptop. How is that different from what they did? Because I'm not the one who committed the crimes, Adonai said evenly. I just made sure they couldn't hide them anymore. You're playing with fire. I'm playing with people who deserve to burn. Amy stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Do you hear yourself? You sound like... She stopped. Like what? Adonai's voice went quiet. Dangerous. Like someone who enjoys this, she whispered. Like someone who's been waiting for an excuse to unleash something you've kept locked away. Adonai's jaw tightened. He walked to the window, his back to her, his hands clasped behind him. When he spoke, his voice was raw, honest. You're right. Amy's breath caught. I did enjoy it, Adonai continued, watching Caleb's face when he realized who I was, watching the board panic, watching everything they built collapse. He turned to face her. It felt good, Amy. Better than it should have. Adonai, you asked me once why I left that life behind. Why I walked away from the family business, from the power, from all of it. His dark eyes locked on hers. It's because I know what I'm capable of. I know how easy it is for me to destroy things, how natural it feels. Amy's hands trembled. So what are you saying? I'm saying that seeing you in that chair, crying, with your hair being cut off, it didn't just make me angry. It woke something up. He stepped closer, something I've spent 10 years trying to bury. And now? Now I don't know if I want to bury it anymore. The words hung in the air between them, heavy and terrible. You're scaring me, Amy whispered. I know. Adonai's voice broke. I'm scaring myself. That night, Dominic called. Adonai took it in his office, door closed. Ami pressed her ear against the wood, listening. The IRS is moving forward with the investigation. Dominic's voice crackled through the speaker. They've frozen the ballroom's accounts. 3 of the board members have hired criminal defense attorneys. Good. Adon, there's something else. A pause. We found more. A second set of books. Unreported income going back 7 years. Money laundering through vendor payments and catering contracts. How much? Close to 4 million. Adonai was silent for a long moment. Who knew? Everyone. Gerald, Patricia, Howard, they all signed off on it. The entire executive team was complicit. Send everything to the DA's office. Already done. They're convening a grand jury next week. Amy stepped back from the door, her heart pounding. $4 million. 7 years. This wasn't just about Caleb anymore. This was about an entire corrupt system that Adone was systematically dismantling, and he was doing it with surgical precision. When Adone emerged from his office an hour later, Ami was sitting on the couch, waiting. "How deep does it go?" she asked. He didn't pretend not to understand. Deep enough that the ballroom might not survive. The venue could be seized as part of the investigation. Even though you own it now? If the property was purchased with laundered money, yes, the government can claim it. He sat beside her, exhausted. "But I'm working with the DA. If I cooperate fully, provide all evidence, they'll let me restructure under a new entity. Clean slate. And the people who worked there, the innocent staff, protected. I've set up a fund. Anyone who loses their job during the transition gets 6 months severance and job placement assistance." Ami looked at him, really looked at him. At the dark circles under his eyes, the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands shook slightly when he reached for his water glass. "You're exhausted," she said quietly. "I can't stop." His voice was hoarse. "If I stop, if I slow down, they'll find a way to spin this, to make you the villain, to make me the monster. I have to stay ahead of them. At what cost?" Adone met her eyes. "Whatever it takes. Even if it destroys you?" Even then, Amy felt tears burning behind her eyes. "I married a man who wanted to leave the darkness behind, who wanted a quiet life, who promised me we'd build something good together. I know, and now I'm watching you become exactly what you ran from." Adone looked down at his hands. "Maybe I never really ran. Maybe I just convinced myself I could. So what now?" Ami's voice cracked. "You burn down the whole city to protect me? You destroy everyone who ever looked at me wrong? Where does it end?" "I don't know," Adone whispered. And for the first time since she'd known him, Amy saw something in her husband's eyes that terrified her more than his power ever could. Uncertainty. The man who always had a plan, who controlled every room he entered, who moved through life with absolute confidence, didn't know what came next, and neither did she. The raid happened on a Tuesday morning. Ami was sitting in a coffee shop 3 blocks from their apartment when her phone lit up with news alerts. She watched the footage on mute federal agents in windbreakers swarming the Aurelio Grand, carrying boxes of documents, escorting board members out in handcuffs. Gerald Hastings, his hands cuffed behind his back, his face crumpled. Patricia Klein, shouting at reporters, her lawyer trying to shield her. Howard Chen, silent, head down, led into an unmarked car. Amy's coffee went cold in her hands. Her phone rang. Adone. She let it go to voicemail. It rang again. And again. On the 4th call, she answered. "I saw. I need you to come home," Adone said. His voice was strained, urgent. "The press is camped outside. I don't want you dealing with them alone. I'm not coming home." Silence on the other end. "Emmy, I can't do this anymore," she whispered. "I can't watch you destroy people. Even people who deserve it. They laundered millions. They enabled abuse. They broke the law." "I know." Her voice cracked, drawing stares from other customers. She lowered it to a whisper. "I know what they did. But this isn't justice anymore. It's annihilation. What did you want me to do?" Adone's voice rose. "Let them get away with it? Let them issue an apology and move on while you live with what they did to you?" "I wanted you to be the man I married," Ami said, tears streaming down her face. "Not whatever you're becoming. I'm protecting you. No, you're punishing everyone within reach. And I think—" She took a shaky breath. "I think you're enjoying it too much to stop." The line went quiet for a long moment. When Adone spoke again, his voice was hollow. "Where are you? It doesn't matter. Amy, please. I need space. I need to think about whether I can live with who you are right now." Her hands trembled around the phone. "Because the man standing in the ruins of all these lives, I don't know him. You do know me." His voice broke. "You're the only person who ever has. Then prove it." Ami whispered. "Stop. Walk away. Let the system handle the rest." "I can't." "Why not?" "Because they hurt you." Adone's voice shattered. "Because I walked into that ballroom and saw you crying, saw them laughing, saw your hair on the floor like trash, and something inside me broke. And I can't put it back together. I don't know how." Amy closed her eyes, tears falling onto the cafe table. "I love you," Adone said quietly. "Everything I'm doing, it's because I love you." "I know," Ami whispered. But I can't be the reason you become a monster. She hung up. Ami stayed with her sister for 3 days. She didn't watch the news, didn't check social media, didn't answer her phone. On the 4th day, her sister sat beside her on the couch. You need to talk to him. I don't know what to say. He's called me 17 times. He's left messages. He sounds... Her sister hesitated. Broken, Ami. Really broken. Good, Amy said bitterly. Maybe he'll finally understand what he's been doing to everyone else. Her sister was quiet for a moment. Do you still love him? Ami's throat tightened. That's the worst part. I do. I love him so much it hurts. But I'm terrified of him. Of what he'll do. Of what he's capable of. Of how easily he dismantled all those people. How coldly he destroyed them. Amy wiped her eyes. What if one day I make him angry? What if I hurt him? What if... Amy? Her sister grabbed her hands. Adone would never hurt you. I know that. But I've seen what he can do when someone crosses him. And I don't want to live my life wondering if there's a line I can't cross. On the 5th day, Ami returned to the apartment. It was late afternoon. She used her key quietly, half expecting the place to be empty. But Adone was there. He was sitting on the floor of the living room, his back against the couch, surrounded by papers, legal documents, financial records, photographs. He looked up when she entered, and Ami's heart clenched. He looked destroyed, unshaven, eyes bloodshot, hair disheveled. His shirt was wrinkled, his tie long abandoned. You came back, he said quietly. I needed clothes, Ami said, though they both knew it was a lie. Adone nodded slowly. I've been going through everything, all the evidence, all the damage. He gestured to the papers, trying to figure out where I crossed the line. Ami set her bag down, and I crossed it the moment I walked through those ballroom doors. His voice was raw. I told myself I was protecting you. But the truth is, I wanted to hurt them. I wanted them to feel powerless the way you felt powerless. Adone, let me finish. He stood, slowly, like his body was carrying a weight it couldn't bear. You asked me where it ends. And I've been asking myself the same thing. Every night, every time I sign another document, make another call, watch another person's life collapse. Tears welled in Amy's eyes. It ends here, Adone said. It has to. Because if I keep going, I'll lose the only thing that matters. He stepped closer. I'll lose you. You're stopping? I'm changing direction. He picked up a folder from the couch and handed it to her. I've been working on this, a foundation, for workers like you. Protection, legal support, advocacy. I want to use what I've taken from the ballroom, the venue, the resources, and build something good. Ami opened the folder. Inside were architectural plans, budget proposals, mission statements, the Stone Safeguard Initiative. Her breath caught. You named it after me. After us, Adone corrected softly. Stone is your maiden name. The name you had before you became mine. The name that represents who you were before. I almost destroyed us both. Ami looked up at him, tears streaming freely now. I can't undo what I've done, Adone said. But I can try to make it mean something. I can turn revenge into justice, destruction into protection. Can you really stop? Amy whispered. Or will you always be one bad day away from burning the world down? Adone was quiet for a long moment. I don't know, he admitted, but I want to try. For you, for us. Ami set the folder down and looked at the man she loved, the man she feared, the man who'd gone to war for her, the man who'd almost lost himself in the process. I need time, she said finally. Adone nodded, his eyes glistening. Take all the time you need. But I'm not leaving again. I'm staying here. We'll figure it out. Relief flooded his face. Okay. And Adone? Get help. Real help. Therapy. Someone who can help you deal with whatever this is. He nodded. I will. Amy picked up her bag and walked toward the bedroom. At the door, she paused. I still love you, she said without turning around. I love you too, Adone whispered. But as Ami closed the door behind her, she wondered if love would be enough to save them from what he'd become. 2 months passed in careful reconstruction. Adone kept his promise. He found a therapist, Dr. Elena Vasquez, a specialist in trauma and power dynamics who didn't flinch when he described what he'd done. He went twice a week, every week, without fail. Ami watched him change, slowly. The sharp edges softened. The cold calculation in his eyes warmed. He started sleeping through the night again. But the work continued. The federal investigation concluded with 3 convictions. Gerald Hastings received 18 months in minimum security. Patricia Klein and Howard Chen accepted plea deals, probation, fines, and permanent bans from holding executive positions in hospitality. Caleb Rowan faced a civil lawsuit that stripped him of everything. His apartment, his car, his savings all liquidated to pay damages. The court ordered him to contribute to the Stone Safeguard Initiative for the next 5 years. He became a cautionary tale, his name synonymous with workplace abuse. Ami felt no satisfaction in his ruin, only a hollow sense of closure. The real work happened quietly, away from cameras and headlines. Adone restructured the Aurelio Grand from the ground up. He hired an entirely new management team, people with backgrounds in worker advocacy, labor law, and ethical business practices. He implemented policies that made the venue a model for the industry. Mandatory harassment training, anonymous reporting systems, mental health resources for all staff. He poured $3 million of his own money into the Stone Safeguard Initiative, hiring advocates, lawyers, and social workers dedicated to protecting service workers nationwide. And he did it all without fanfare, without press releases, without seeking credit. He was building something good from the ashes of what he'd destroyed. One evening in late October, Ami came home to find Adone at the kitchen table, staring at an envelope. "What is it?" she asked, setting down her bag. He slid it across to her. "An invitation, from the Aurelio Grand. They're hosting the initiative's official launch event next month. They want you to speak." Amy's hands trembled as she opened the envelope. The invitation was elegant, printed on heavy cardstock. "You are cordially invited to the launch of the Stone Safeguard Initiative, a night celebrating worker protection, dignity, and justice. Special keynote. Ami Stone Ferry." Her breath caught. "They want me to go back there?" "You don't have to," Adone said quickly. "I can tell them no. We can hold the launch somewhere else." "No." Amy looked up at him, something fierce flickering in her chest. "I'll do it." "Are you sure?" "I need to." Her voice steadied. "I need to walk back into that room and show myself that I'm not broken." Adone reached across the table and took her hand. "You were never broken. You were hurt. There's a difference." Ami squeezed his hand. "Then help me prove it." The next 4 weeks were a blur of preparation. Amy worked with a speech coach, a stylist, and a therapist of her own, Dr. Sarah Chen, who specialized in public trauma and recovery. She wrote and rewrote her speech a dozen times, finding her voice in the words. She wasn't just speaking for herself anymore. She was speaking for every worker who'd been humiliated, degraded, or silenced. Adone watched from the sidelines, offering support but never pushing. He'd learned to give her space, to trust her strength. One night, a week before the event, Ami found him in his office, reviewing security protocols for the launch. "You're planning for every contingency, aren't you?" she asked from the doorway. He looked up, sheepish. "Old habits. It's okay to be protective." Amy crossed the room and sat on the edge of his desk. "As long as you remember, I can protect myself too." "I know." Adone set down his pen. "But after everything, you taught me something," Ami interrupted. "You showed me that power doesn't have to destroy. It can build. It can protect. It can change things." She cupped his face. "You changed, Adone. You chose to become someone better." His eyes glistened. "I'm still trying." "I know. And I'm proud of you." Adone pulled her close, burying his face in her shoulder. "I don't deserve you." "Probably not," Amy said with a small smile. "But you're stuck with me anyway." The night before the launch, Ami stood in front of the bedroom mirror, practicing her speech one last time. Her hair had grown back, not fully, but enough. Soft, dark waves that framed her face. She looked different now. Stronger, older, maybe, but not broken. Never broken. Adone appeared in the doorway, dressed in a sharp black suit. "Ready?" "No." Ami turned to face him. "But I'm doing it anyway." He smiled, a real smile, the kind she'd fallen in love with years ago. "That's my girl." They arrived at the Aurelio Grand at 6 p.m. the next evening. The ballroom had been transformed. Gone were the ostentatious chandeliers and gold accents. In their place, warm lighting, simple elegance, and banners displaying the initiative's mission statement. Workers, servers, cooks, custodians, valets were seated at the front tables, honored guests instead of invisible labor. Industry leaders, journalists, and advocates filled the remaining seats. And in the back corner, barely visible, sat Caleb Rowan. Ami's breath caught when she saw him. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. His expensive suits replaced with something off the rack. His confident posture replaced with hunched shoulders. He met her eyes briefly, then looked away in shame. Adoni noticed her staring. I didn't invite him. The court mandated his attendance as part of his restitution. It's fine, Amy said quietly. He should see this. The program began with welcome remarks from the initiative's new director, followed by testimonials from workers who'd been helped by the program. Then it was Ami's turn. She walked to the podium on shaking legs. The same floor where she'd been humiliated now transformed into a platform for her voice. The room fell silent. Ami gripped the podium, looked out at the faces staring back at her, and began. 6 months ago, I stood in this room as a victim, she said, her voice clear and steady. Tonight, I stand here as a survivor, and more importantly, as an advocate. She told her story, not sparing the painful details, not softening the truth. She described the humiliation, the fear, the helplessness, but she also described the aftermath, the reckoning, the rebuilding. This initiative isn't about revenge, Amy said, her eyes sweeping across the room. It's about making sure what happened to me never happens to anyone else. It's about creating systems that protect the vulnerable instead of enabling the powerful. She paused, her gaze landing on Caleb in the back. And it's about believing that people can change, that institutions can evolve, that justice doesn't have to mean destruction, it can mean transformation. The room erupted in applause. Ami stepped back from the podium, tears streaming down her face, and found Adoni's eyes in the crowd. He was standing in the back, hands clasped, watching her with an expression of pure pride and love. She had reclaimed this space. She had transformed her pain into purpose, and she had done it on her own terms. After the speeches, after the networking and photographs, after the last guest had left, Ami and Adon stood alone in the empty ballroom. How do you feel? Adona asked softly. Amy looked around at the room that had broken her, now rebuilt into something beautiful, like I can finally breathe. Adoni pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. You were incredible tonight. We were incredible, Ami corrected. You could have destroyed this place. Instead, you helped me transform it. I'm still learning, Adone admitted. So am I. Ami looked up at him. But I think we're going to be okay. Yeah, Adoni whispered, his voice thick with emotion. I think we are. They walked out of the Aurelio Grand hand in hand, leaving the ghosts of that terrible night behind. Together, they had survived the darkness. Now they would build the light. 3 months later, Amy received an email that made her heart stop. Subject: Special Recognition Event. Your presence requested. Dear Miss Ferry, the Aurelio Grand Ballroom, under new ethical leadership, cordially invites you to return as our guest of honor for our grand reopening gala. We would be honored if you would deliver remarks about transformation, resilience, and the future of worker dignity in our industry. The event will celebrate 6 months of the Stone Safeguard Initiative and recognize the progress we've made together. Amy stared at the screen, her coffee growing cold in her hand. Return to the ballroom. Not as a waitress, not even as a speaker at her own foundation's launch, as the guest of honor. Adone found her 20 minutes later, still staring at the email. What's wrong? He asked, concern crossing his face. She turned the laptop toward him. He read silently, his expression carefully neutral. What do you think? Ami asked. I think it's your decision. Adone sat beside her. But I also think you've already made it. Ami smiled slightly. How do you know? Because I know you. You don't run from things that scare you. You face them head on. He took her hand. That's why you're stronger than I'll ever be. That's not true. It is. Adone's voice was firm but gentle. I broke people to feel powerful. You survived being broken and chose to build something better. That takes a kind of strength I'm still learning. Amy leaned against his shoulder. Will you come with me? I'll be wherever you need me to be. The night of the gala arrived with unseasonable warmth for January. Ami stood in front of the bedroom mirror, adjusting the midnight blue gown Adone had insisted on buying her. Her hair had grown past her shoulders now, styled in elegant waves. She looked like herself again, but different, transformed. You look beautiful, Adone said from the doorway. He was dressed in a charcoal gray suit with a black shirt, looking every bit the powerful man he was, but with softer edges now. I'm nervous, Amy admitted. I know. But you're ready. They arrived at the Aurelio Grand at 7 p.m. The entrance was lined with photographers, not paparazzi, hunting for scandal. but legitimate press covering the event as a story of transformation and justice. Inside, the ballroom took Amy's breath away. Everything had changed. The oppressive gold had been replaced with warm neutrals. The crystal chandeliers remained, but the lighting was softer, more welcoming. Tables were arranged to create intimate spaces rather than hierarchical distance. And at every table, workers and executives sat together, a visible symbol of the venue's new values. Miss Ferry. The new general manager, Teresa Morales, a 52-year-old veteran of hospitality with a background in labor advocacy, approached with a warm smile. "We're so honored you're here. Thank you for inviting me," Amy said, surprised by how genuine the words felt. "This place exists because of you," Teresa said simply. "Your courage started a revolution in our industry. 18 venues across the state have adopted our worker protection model. The ripple effect has been extraordinary." Amy felt tears prick her eyes. "I had no idea." "Come," Teresa gestured toward the main floor. "There are people who want to meet you." For the next hour, Amy met workers whose lives had been changed by the initiative. A single mother who'd been harassed by her manager and now had legal representation. A young man who'd been fired for reporting wage theft and was now reinstated with back pay. A server who'd been assaulted by a customer and received trauma counseling and support. Each story was a thread in a larger tapestry of change. "You did this," one woman said, gripping Amy's hands. "You stood up when the rest of us couldn't. Thank you." Amy could barely speak through her tears. "We did it together." At 8 p.m., the program began. Teresa delivered opening remarks about the venue's transformation. The initiative's director presented impact statistics. Over 300 workers helped. 12 policy changes implemented across the industry. 5 abusive managers removed from positions of power. Then Teresa returned to the podium. "And now," she said, her voice warm, "please join me in welcoming the woman whose courage started it all. The reason we're here tonight, Amy Stone Ferry." The room rose to its feet. Amy walked to the stage through a standing ovation, her heart pounding, her vision blurred with tears. She reached the podium and looked out at hundreds of faces, workers, advocates, journalists, industry leaders, and in the back, barely visible, Caleb Rowan. He was standing too, his hands clasped, his head bowed. Amy took a breath and began. "I didn't want to come back here," she said honestly. "This room holds one of the worst memories of my life, but it also holds something else now, proof that pain can become purpose, that trauma can transform into triumph." She spoke about the night that changed everything, about the fear and humiliation, about feeling powerless and invisible. "But I'm not invisible anymore," Amy said, her voice strengthening. "None of us are. Every worker who's been demeaned, dismissed, or degraded, you are seen. You are valued. You matter." The room erupted in applause. "This initiative isn't just mine," Amy continued. "It belongs to every person who's ever been made to feel small. It belongs to anyone who's been told their dignity is negotiable. It belongs to all of us." She paused, her eyes finding Adon in the back. He was watching her with such fierce pride that it took her breath away. "6 months ago, I thought my life was over," Amy said softly. "Tonight I realize it was just beginning. Because sometimes the worst things that happen to us become the catalyst for the best things we'll ever do." The applause was deafening. Amy stepped away from the podium, and the room remained standing, not just clapping, but celebrating. Celebrating her. Celebrating change. Celebrating hope. After the program, Amy was surrounded by well-wishers. Journalists requested interviews. Workers shared their stories. Industry leaders pledged support. Through it all, Adoni stayed at the edge of the room, watching. Finally, as the crowd thinned, Amy made her way to him. "Why didn't you come up front?" she asked. "Because tonight wasn't about me," Adoni said simply. "It was about you. About what you've built. We built it together." "No," Adoni shook his head gently. "I tore things down. You built them back up. There's a difference." Amy took his hand. "You're learning the difference. That's what matters." As they prepared to leave, Amy noticed Caleb standing near the exit. He looked like he'd been waiting, working up the courage to approach. When he saw her looking, he took a hesitant step forward. "Miss Ferry," he said quietly. I just wanted to say—" "I know," Amy interrupted. She didn't want his apology, didn't need it. But she saw something in his face, genuine remorse. The kind that comes from consequences and reflection. "The work you're required to do for the initiative," Amy said. "Do it well. Help other people change the way you're trying to change." Caleb's eyes glistened. "I will," I promise. Ami nodded once, then walked past him toward the exit. She had forgiven him not for his sake, but for hers. She was done carrying his weight. Outside, the January air was crisp and clear. Adoni draped his coat around Ami's shoulders. "Ready to go home?" he asked. Ami looked back at the Aurelio Grand one last time. The place where she'd been broken, where she'd been rebuilt, where she'd reclaimed her power. "Yeah," she said, smiling up at her husband. "I'm ready." They walked to the car, hand in hand, leaving the past where it belonged, behind them. 6 months after the gala, Amy woke to sunlight streaming through the bedroom windows and the smell of coffee brewing in the kitchen. She stretched, feeling the unfamiliar sensation of peace settle over her like a warm blanket. The nightmares had stopped 3 weeks ago. In the kitchen, Adone was reading the morning paper, a cup of espresso steaming beside him. He looked up when she entered, a soft smile crossing his face. "Morning," he said. "Morning." Ami poured herself coffee and joined him at the table. "What's the news?" "The initiative just received a grant from the Department of Labor," Adoni said, sliding the paper toward her. $2 million to expand nationally. Amy's eyes widened. "Are you serious?" "Completely," Teresa called an hour ago. "They want to use our model in 20 states by the end of the year." Ami sat back, overwhelmed. "This is really happening. It's really happening." Adone reached across the table and took her hand. "You started something that's changing the entire industry." "We started something," Amy corrected. Adone squeezed her hand. "I'm just the money. You're the heart." Later that morning, Ami received a call from Dr. Chen, her therapist. "I wanted to check in before our session tomorrow," Dr. Chen said. "How are you feeling about the upcoming anniversary?" "The anniversary. 1 year since that night at the Aurelio Grand." "Honestly," Ami said, "I'm okay. Better than okay, actually. It doesn't hurt like it used to." "That's significant progress," Dr. Chen said warmly. "You've done remarkable work this year, Amy. You should be proud." After they hung up, Ami sat with the words. Proud. Yes, she was proud. Proud of surviving. Proud of speaking up. Proud of transforming her pain into something that protected others. She was proud of the woman she'd become. That afternoon, Ami and Adone drove to the Aurelio Grand for a private meeting with Teresa. The venue had officially been renamed the Aurelio Center for Hospitality Ethics. It was now a training facility for the entire industry, offering certifications in ethical management, worker advocacy, and conflict resolution. "The first class graduates next month," Teresa said, walking them through the renovated space. 60 managers from across the country. They'll return to their venues equipped to create safer, more dignified workplaces. Ami felt emotion welling up. "This is incredible. We're also launching a scholarship program," Teresa continued, "for workers who want to advance in the industry. Education, mentorship, career placement, everything they need to move from hourly positions to leadership roles." "Who's funding it?" Adoni asked. Teresa smiled. "You are. The restitution payments from Caleb and the former board members are being directed into the scholarship fund. By the end of the decade, we estimate we'll have helped over 1,000 workers advance their careers." Amy's breath caught. The money that had been taken from vulnerable workers was now being used to lift them up. It was perfect symmetry. That evening, Ami and Adone sat on their apartment balcony, watching the sun set over the city. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't walked in that night?" Ami asked quietly. Adone was silent for a long moment. "Every day. What do you think would have happened? Caleb would still be abusing people. The ballroom would still be covering it up. The system would still be broken." He turned to face her. "And you would be carrying that trauma alone." "I wouldn't have been alone," Amy said. "I would have had you. Maybe. But I don't know if I could have helped you heal if I hadn't seen it happen. If I hadn't understood how deeply they hurt you." Adoni's voice grew thick. "That night broke something in me, but it also showed me what I was capable of, both the destructive and the constructive." "And now?" Ami asked. "What are you capable of now?" Adone smiled slightly. "I'm still figuring that out. But I know one thing: I'm capable of being the man you deserve. Not perfect, not without flaws, but better than I was." Amy leaned her head on his shoulder. "That's all I've ever wanted." 2 weeks later, on the actual anniversary, Amy stood in front of a congressional committee in Washington, D.C. She'd been invited to testify about workplace harassment in the hospitality industry and to advocate for federal worker protection legislation. The hearing room was packed: legislators, journalists, advocates, and workers who'd traveled across the country to show support. Ami sat at the witness table, a microphone in front of her, and told her story one more time. But this time, she wasn't just a survivor sharing her trauma. She was an expert presenting solutions. She outlined policy recommendations, cited research, presented data from the initiative's first year. The committee members listened intently, several taking notes, others nodding in agreement. When she finished, the committee chair, Senator Patricia Owens, leaned forward. "Miss Ferry, your testimony has been powerful and informative. I want you to know that this committee takes these issues seriously, and we will be drafting legislation based in part on the model you've presented today." Ami's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, Senator." "No," Senator Owens said firmly. "Thank you for your courage, for your advocacy, for showing us that change is possible." Outside the hearing room, Adone was waiting. He pulled Ami into his arms, holding her tight. "You did it," he whispered. "You changed the law. We don't know that yet." "We know." Adone pulled back, cupping her face. "They're going to pass that legislation, and when they do, millions of workers will be protected because you spoke up." Ami let the tears fall freely. "I never imagined when I was sitting in that chair crying, thinking my life was over, I never imagined it would lead to this." "That's because you couldn't see what I saw," Adone said softly. "You couldn't see how strong you were, how resilient, how capable of turning darkness into light." "I learned that from you," Ami said. "You showed me that power doesn't have to corrupt, it can transform." "We taught each other," Adone said. "You taught me to build. I taught you to fight. Together we learned what justice really looks like." 6 months after that, the Dignity and Hospitality Act passed both houses of Congress and was signed into law. Ami was invited to the signing ceremony. She stood behind the president, surrounded by advocates and legislators, as the pen moved across the page. When it was done, the president turned and handed her the pen. "This is yours," the president said. "You made this happen." Amy held the pen, the instrument that had just changed millions of lives, and felt the weight of what she'd accomplished. 1 year ago, she'd been a waitress trying to survive. Now she was a force for change that would echo for generations. That night, Amy and Adone returned to New York. They stood together in their apartment, looking out at the city lights. "What do we do now?" Amy asked. "Whatever we want," Adone said. "We've earned that." Amy smiled. "I think I want to keep going. There's still so much work to do. Then we'll do it together." Ami turned to face him, taking both his hands. "You know what the best part of all this is?" "What?" We didn't just survive what happened. We transformed it. We took the worst night of our lives and turned it into something that will protect people forever." Adone pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. "That's what justice looks like," he whispered. "Not revenge, not destruction, transformation. And love," Ami added. "Justice looks like love." They stood together in the quiet, two people who had been broken and rebuilt, who had walked through fire and emerged stronger. They had fought for each other. They had fought for justice. And they had won. Not because they destroyed their enemies, but because they built something better, together. Thanks for staying with this story right till the final moment. You're the reason these stories come alive. If you're ready for another powerful journey, just tap the next video on your screen. And before you go, leave a quick comment and rate this story from 1 to 10. I'm excited to see your thoughts and connect with you down there.